I've never heard you speak about meditation. I'd like to hear.
Yes.
On meditation.
The idea of meditation. Will you do something, please? Will you forget the word entirely? Forget it. Why do you need the word? When you say the word, what does it do? It activates all your acquired ideas as to what meditation is, which may be entirely wrong. And most of it is. When you call meditation, have you ever asked yourself what you actually do? Well, don't say I meditate. What are you doing? Are you closing your eyes with 10 other people in a room with a leader in front of it? What's actually happening when you bow your head and close your eyes and call it meditation? Have you ever even performed that intelligent task of asking what is happening? I will tell you that in most cases, nothing is happening, except you have said, I'm going to meditate, and that sounds pretty good. That sounds as if I'm doing something spiritual. And so you close your eyes and bow your head, and what happens? Nothing, because you stay on the level of thought, of mentality. Now, could we substitute, in order to get rid of the word meditation so it won't lead us astray, could we simply say that I am going to engage in a real creative act, creativity simply being something that gives me practical knowledge about myself. I'm going to meditate, without using the word, 24 hours a day, simply by watching, looking at what happens to me every second when I walk into this room. When I first see the speaker, and already I have an automatic assumption or reaction about him because he looks like my brother, or whatever your reaction might be, or he doesn't look like someone that you used to know who used to teach classes. Can I see, when I meet a new situation, that I already ruin it and don't get the lesson from it because I walk right into it with all my old thought patterns, all my own responses? So meditation, right meditation, again without using the word, could be said to be a state where I am watching my reaction every second without identifying with the reaction, so that I don't go into the second thought on it, but end it immediately. So if I can begin to see the thought coming up, well, that isn't what I believe what that man says, you can drop that. And when you have dropped the thought, drop the reaction, you have ended the possibility of a wrong reaction to it. The wrong reaction being something that you have acquired from the past, which you take as being a right answer, a comfortable answer, which is not that at all. Do you know the right answer? When there is a watchful response, and then dropping the thought so that it does not fall on your conditioning, onto the acquired sense of you. Very simple, but do it. And watch how difficult it is to break the pattern, but we're not afraid of hard work. And in connection with that, let's beware of all spiritual words like that. We've already discussed the idea of God, how the word God is not God himself. What other spiritual or esoteric words are you using because they sound good and sound as if they might be doing something for you when they are nothing more than words? Let me ask you. So you have studied religion, philosophy, metaphysics, the whole business for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. You've got a piece of paper on the wall that says you took a 10-week course in this or that sort of philosophy. And you're still a scared and frightened human being. Now, what on earth good have those 10 or 15 years of storing up these words done for you? Have you ever slowed down your life to the point where you can ask, how am I any different today than I was yesterday as a result of following this philosophy? I didn't ask whether you gave a talk before a large audience, or whether you wrote a book, or whether you feel that you're spiritual. I'm asking you, how do you feel internally? Are you a little more free of the fear of death, for example? A little more free of the fear of what this mad world can do to you? How many people go to theological seminaries or go to a cave in the mountain and merely come out with ideas of being spiritual, and they're the same nervous, anxious human being they were before? Don't say anything to them. They won't hear you. They can't hear. They're psychologically deaf. They have invested in the idea, in the word. Prayer, for example. Do you know what happens at a prayer meeting? Nothing. If you want to pray, why don't you pray to be free of this madness that is in your own psychic system? Or is there a stronger word? What's a stronger word than madness? Insanity? This tornado? Maybe you're better with words than I am. Why don't you pray to get rid of that, which is possible, instead of covering it over with the words and labels of meditation and prayer and God in Christ will save you from your sins? Look, do you really think God can save you from your sins 10 years from now? You know, if you were physically sick, you had headache and tummy ache and the rest of it, and the doctor came over and he said, here's some medicine. You drink that, and in a year from now, you'll be okay. You'll be healthy. You'd look at him oddly, wouldn't you? See, I don't want to be healthy a year from now. Give me something to go. Do it now. This is exactly what we do when you take these false doctrines that are passed on to us that say a future heaven will be your reward. Meanwhile, be the devil that you are right now. You're allowed to be a devil. Yeah. Why don't you stop being a devil now? Now, while we're here, today, before the end of the meeting, why don't you have the courage to drop all the false ideas you have about yourself so that you can go out here? Because, you see, you are not a slave to that little gadget over there that is called a clock, nor the paper on the wall called a calendar. You think you are. That's because you're thinking you are. You can drop the calendar, don't drop the clock, it'll break, but you can drop the idea of clock and be free of it now. But you and me have to die with it. Then how can I be scared anymore? Then I come to a point, listen to this, listen. Then I come to a point where nothing more need be said. Nothing more need be said. Then you don't have to talk about spirituality anymore, about God anymore, about saving yourself anymore, because the silence is the state. God doesn't have to talk about being God. Isn't that nice? There's nothing more to say to myself or to anyone else. I'm not compelled to go out and save the world from its sins anymore, as if I was doing it in the first place. I was only adding my own sins to my own neurosis to an already neurotic world, claiming that I was going to save it religiously or politically or socially, philosophically. In this world, Madmen are trying to save madmen. And that's why no one gets well. We're trying to become sane here so that in that silence itself is healing. Because the kindest act I can ever perform for him or this lady is to not interfere with their lives with my own neurosis. Can you think of a more tremendous act of kindness to another human being than to cease to trouble them because I've got all this pressure in me, all this need to prove myself to them? Therefore, I don't do that anymore because I'm sane. Do you see what conscience is now? Conscience is the lack of throwing my own sickness out into the world. Boy, look where this leaves us. It means I have to stop preaching to you and start paying attention daily, which we just discussed, to what is happening inside of me and not be afraid of it, but work scientifically with it. How many people do you know who want to do this? Remember I said this morning, when you're talking with someone else, a relative or a business associate, you know very well how far you can go in maybe correcting them. And you know where you have to keep your mouth shut. The slightest criticism of their way, and up goes the eyebrows, and the change in expression, and the perhaps hatred, or at least contempt or scorn. We're going to be very heroic, really, without vanity involved in it, really heroic and really brave and really strong by descending into the hell that is me. I either do that or I stay sick. I do this or I stay sick. What do you want? Make up your mind. And I will tell you, as if you didn't already know, you'll never be able to successfully lie yourself out of doing what is necessary. There's no way you can lie. No way. Why don't we just give up and go through the dreadful humiliation, the dreadful shame of seeing what a big phony I have been all my life? That is decency. When I see what a phony I have been, for the first time in my 20, 40, 60 years, I'm showing an ounce of authentic decency. And about time. Aren't you tired of being you? You are. You're very tired of being you, aren't you? All right, I have good news for you. You don't have to be you anymore. If you will permit the truth, and as the truth operates on the human level in this group, if you will permit the truth to destroy the lie which is your life. We don't just tell lies, you understand? We don't just tell lies, we do. But we are. I am a lie. You are a lie. When I die, the lie dies. And then I don't tell you lies anymore to trick you and get what I want from you and hurt you and be unkind to you and make you cry anymore. Remember those people you've made cry in the past? You weren't very nice, were you? I wasn't very nice, was I? We're putting an end to it. No more. We're not going along with it anymore. You go, do what you want. I'm not going along with it anymore. Never. Okay. Aren't you glad you can't get away with it anymore? Huh? Aren't you glad you found a place where you're not permitted to tell your lies? To deceive? Aren't you glad that you're seen through? That your phoniness and hypocrisy, which is not, I'm not condemning, you're not being condemned for it. You're being told it as a fact. Aren't you grateful that you can't get away with it like you do with your family and your friends and your club? Don't you see the sorrow of being in that club or family where you all lie to each other, knowing way back here that it's a falsehood? You should take a deep breath right now, that at last you're going this way and you've slowed down, now it's going back that way. Because in this group, you're absolutely not permitted to continue to be a lie. Tremendous. Isn't it? It is. Aren't you glad that people here won't agree with you when you try to squirm out of it? You know what you're doing? It's just astonishing, but let me use the word God too. It's astonishing, but for the first time, we are really putting God on my side, on your side, on our side. God, truth, reality is on our side. I'm telling you, truth is on our side in this group, not out there, right here, now. You won't find it out there. You'll find lies out there. But you can take this truth in here, out there, and it will be immune to the lies out there. Because you are your own world, and you take the world of reality out there, it can't be touched. How can darkness touch light? It can't be done. Could you girls sit over this way a little more without blocking any of the other ladies, please? I want to be able to see you better. Without blocking the other ladies. Sit on the floor. When you walk alone, when you walk independently, do you understand that there's no thought about it? Therefore, you never say, either in bravado or in despair, I am walking alone in this world. Do you follow this? I'll try again. When you are really walking alone, which means you're free, when you really are, you don't think that you are, because it's not on the level of thought. You simply do it without being affected by it on the mental level. There's no thought about it. Either I'm alone, and I better find a boyfriend or girlfriend or someone to keep me company, go move with my children or whatever. There's not that, or there's no thought. I am a free human being who doesn't need anybody. But it becomes a nothing, and therefore is effortless, and therefore can take all changes in the future without thought. Then you'll know what Christ meant when he said, take no thought for tomorrow. For tomorrow will take care of the things of itself, which merely means that life tomorrow will unfold as it unfolds. But if I am one with life, how can there be any conflict between me and what happens tomorrow? even if I die. See, if I'm one with something, how can there be division and conflict? If I identify with life, I will fear death. If I fear death, I fear life. Right? Look at it. If you fear death, you're afraid of life. How can it be separated? Our opportunity here is to die while we're alive, psychologically. Then there's no division. Then who dies? You tell me who dies. Tom Smith dies. Mary Jones dies. Who are they? They never existed, except as labels. You've got a lot of money. You identify with that, or you have 2 cents, and you identify with that. Do you understand? A poor man can be just as identified as a rich man. I'm poor. You're just as identified as a rich man. Now, look, don't resist the shock of what you are hearing. This is a shock. Some of you have such thick walls you don't even get shocked as much as you could be, rightly. The walls are so thick you won't get shocked. Do you think this is going to shock a man who's labeled himself as already having the truth and who can preach it to others? It's not going to shock him at all, because his wall is so thick as he's sitting listening to this. He will be frightened and he will be hostile, but he won't know he is, because the wall has prevented him from seeing it. And so he'll go out and continue to preach sermons and deceive others as he's continued to deceive himself. The degree of value you will get in these meetings is the degree to which you are shaken and shocked and plunged into deeper despair and dismay. Do you understand that? Do you understand that? For a good part of the time this morning, we discussed the idea that we're living in a dream security. Remember we talked about the breakdown? I will guarantee all of you something. Just guarantee it. And you know it. You've got it back here too. I'll guarantee you that sooner or later, it could be this afternoon, it could be 5 years from now, you're going to have a breakdown. I don't mean in the usual term. One way or another, you're going to be in despair. You're going to be shaken. And you're going to be thrown into a state which you didn't think should happen to me. Why should this happen to me? It happened because all these years you have been covering up the despair and the violence in which you have been secretly living. And this severe shock that came accidentally from the outside shook your beautiful dream. You were asleep, dreaming beautiful dreams of conquest and gold and women and men. And the accidental factor out there shook it. The sudden health problem you didn't know you had, the money going, your friend leaving. You know, anytime you're surprised and shocked by anything whatever, there's only one cause of it. Because you were living in dreamland not knowing it. Because you have never investigated dreamland to see what it's like. You simply dozed in it. That shock can wake us up. if we use it rightly. You get a little bit of a shock here. I'm afraid some of you are going to walk right out of here not taking with you the gold that you could have had. It is a beautiful thing to be shocked while trying to use it properly so that you get to the point where you cannot possibly be shocked anymore. I'll give you an example. You read in the newspaper or see on television some shocking event of a crime, of a riot, of a war, of a kidnapping, of some kind of violence, and you're so surprised, or I'll say we're so surprised. Do you mean to tell me if you go to a zoo and you see a couple tigers clawing at each other that you're surprised by it? You see a couple of wolves locked in each other's, fighting each other. You're surprised by that? Any surprise or shock you have at human evil means that you have an equal amount of evil in you. Unseen, unresolved, and untaken care of. Because that shock is a self-righteous reaction in which you're saying to yourself how awful that those people were blown up by those evil conspirators, those men of violence. And you're saying, I wouldn't do that. You would. You think you wouldn't? Under the right condition, you would. We have to get to the point where we've seen so much of this violence in ourselves and through proper work have got rid of it so that we're never surprised at any violence out there. Take two, speaking of violence, carrying it a little bit further. When you see two groups of violent men, two armies, two groups of revolutionaries, do you have any idea of what you're doing when you take the side of one of them against the other? You're taking the side of violence because it's in you. Why do you take the side of people who are killing each other, who are hurting each other? Why do you take a side at all? Because you're afraid to be without a side. Because the end of the side is the end of you. Why don't you go to the end of you and see what happens? So that you and I don't contribute to the insanity out there. Aren't you tired of hurting yourself and other people too? Yes, you're tired of it, but you don't know what to do. Here, we are learning what to do. I hope you are shaken to your roots today so that you can never go back to that life you've been living, so that you're disturbed but have added the new factor of working on yourself properly so as to end the disturbance once and for all. Questions, comments? Yes.
Could we get into some of the basics of the term working on yourself? What,
All right, okay.
A person who discovers that he is in this false game that you're talking about this morning, what would be some of the steps?
All right. Let's start very simply, but it's much deeper than it will sound. All right, much deeper. Okay. When we leave here, you're going to be talking with other people. You're going back to town maybe. You're going to be talking with your friends and your relatives. I will ask you to do something. Now, if you do it just once, that's great. You have to start somewhere. You do it just once. Between now and, say, the next 24 hours, maybe the next 2 minutes after we leave for that minute, working on myself, what do I do? I see that when I'm away from here, and I'm sitting rather quietly here, I'm not expressing myself, but boy, wait till I get out into that car or at home, and a challenge comes up from the exterior, from someone I'm riding in the car with, the bus driver, the comment on television, wherever it might be. At the same time I'm watching that, I'm watching me. I'm watching as many things as I can, and this itself is a talk, but I can watch, among other things, my facial expression. You know, you could watch your face, can't you? You know, if I ask you what's your facial expression, you can tell pretty much. Tell whether it's relaxed, anger, whatever. I want you just once, to see the expression on your face when a challenging situation of any kind comes up. If you can see that your face registered resistance, fear, anger, resistance to something someone said or some incident, or even your own thought about how awkward you are or whatever, if you can see that, you've taken the first step towards seeing what is this meditation without words that we've been talking about. Seeing your actual state. Or maybe, contrary, instead of being a negative state in that way, you were a cheerful little butterfly, which you don't even feel. But you've got this big smile on your face. And you're the nice sunshine spreader and all that. Can you see that it's just an act, that you don't really feel that way? If I can see it, only after I see it can I start to drop it and die to it, drop the mechanical reaction I have when this challenge comes up, so that it doesn't fall on my artificial parts, but on my real parts, in which case I will see it clearly without the customary emotional negative reaction. If you do just that much, but if you refuse to see it, which the masses of human beings do, you cannot change yourself. How many of you have been hostile in the last 24, to yourself? How many of you have been hostile to anyone in the last 24 hours? Last 48, the last week? How many times have you been hostile? That is what you are like. You are hostility. And I or you am punished by it. That is what work is. The lie is so deep, we don't want to face it because we're afraid there might not be an answer to it. I'm telling you that there is an answer to it. You could, now I'll tell you something. We're all here. We're thinking about these things. We're studying them. We're going into them. Now I'll tell you. You listen. This what I'm telling you is a truth, a fact. If, as best you can, no matter how bad a shape you're in, I don't care what you were in the past, you were a criminal, you were vicious. This has no meaning. It's no meaning. If you were to start here today as best you can, to understand as best as you can, because it's very difficult. We're breaking the habits of 40, 50 years maybe. If you were to work patiently and come back to it, come back and work with a group that might be here, or come up in Boulder City where we have the group, or work on your own, which you won't be able to do very successfully at this point. You need all the help you can get. You will find yourself gradually but definitely changing inwardly. Your whole values would change. For example, you would find yourself a little bit each week, a little bit less envious of other people who have what you think you would like to have, whether it's money or their youth or their so-called charm, which is phony, or whatever they have that you would like to have. Or they don't have nearly as many troubles as I have had all my life. You ever known people who who think they've been singled out by God for special persecution? We all think that we've had more troubles than anybody. This would be work, and you would see the results of this right work over a period of time. One of the greatest mistakes you can make, and I have seen it made, is to go a little bit along with this and then lose it because of a great swelling up of egotism, where you were influenced by another evil person because he or she is a devil, and because you still had some of the devil in you, you went along with it, and you dropped out and lost this. It's a deadly thing to do, because you find it very, very hard to ever come back again, because your false sense of self has now been hardened into a person. Well, I tried that and it didn't work for me. Of course it didn't, because you preferred your egotism and your sickness more than you preferred health and sanity. I will tell you, it's very dangerous to drop away from, you on stage, you're in danger already. What do you mean get more danger? We're all in danger by not having the truth. But by falling away from this and then lying about the reason you fell away, it's a very dangerous thing to do. Remember in the New Testament it says, no man having put his hand to the plow can turn back, something like that. This is what that's talking about. Once you get hardened into the belief that you don't need the truth anymore, you can then go ahead and pretend that you're a student of truth and continue to live in your old nature and be your own worst enemy. And no one will ever be able to talk to you because you're too hardened. And those who really know the truth wouldn't even dream of saying a single word to you anymore, because they know you're gone. And you're going to die never knowing what you could have had. I will repeat, you will die never knowing what you could have had. The fear, listen to this. The fear we have of facing the truth, the fear we have of our own destruction itself is false. The fear I have of facing myself, of facing these things, the fear itself is false. The fear itself gives me a sense of I, of self. I'm afraid to go along with that anymore. I'm not going to go, I have my religion. I'm not going along with that anymore. That is your I. That is your false sense of self. Why don't you drop it and see if you're still afraid? You won't be. Why don't you just drop your fear? I said, why don't you just drop your fear? It's like you drop a pencil. Why don't you do it and see what happens? If you drop fear, can you be afraid? Why don't you drop your fear of facing these things, of going into this jungle it's in? Go into the jungle being afraid, stay with it, and eventually you know how to drop it. Then see if you're afraid anymore. See if you're hostile anymore. Who you're going to be hostile against? There's nothing to be hostile against. Yes.
Then what's the harm in being cheerful if you don't feel cheerful?
Pardon?
What is the harm in being cheerful if you don't feel cheerful?
Would you repeat that, Joan? I'm sorry. Would you?
What's the harm in being or appearing cheerful to others if you don't feel cheerful inside?
Because you're lying to yourself about your state. You're divided. We're not advocating being uncheerful, you understand? I'm saying, why do you put on a front of being happy when you're not? See? Why do you divide yourself? Because now you begin to believe in your stage performance, which we grow to do, unfortunately, so that we take the stage performance as real. How many times have we said, watch yourself just before you fall asleep when no one is around and you don't have to pretend anymore, and you tell me whether you're cheerful or not. We are trying to make the inner and the outer, the physical in this case, one thing, instead of playing a stage role of being cheerful. Don't you know the penalty of being self-divided? The penalty of being self-divided is to be uncheerful. We want to be authentically cheerful without effort because we've found ourselves. Then there's nothing to complain about. Then there's nothing to be cheerful about either, is there? Huh? Is there anything to be cheerful? You are cheer. You are it. Yes, Dick.
Well, I was just going to say, wouldn't your natural state, our real natural state, our real self, would be cheerful?
Yes.
Period. There'd be
Sure.
no, that'd be the state.
Right. 1 minute, let's take our break. You're following this. There's a part of you that is following this perfectly. When I come to the edge of the cliff where it's all dark out there, I have to take the leap without asking what is going to become of me. I must have no concern of what is going to happen to me when I take the leap out into that. Do you know what taking the leap consists of? Refusing to go along with all these precious but damaging ideas by which I have lived. That is leaping into the dark. Saying with emotion, I am not going to live being a scared human being anymore. That is a healthy and valuable leap out into the dark. Saying, I am not going to sit here and tell one lie after another while pretending that it's an intelligent comment or question. I'm going to stop telling lies. You don't even know what a lie is. We don't even know what a lie is because we have lived with it so long. We have become the lie itself. We don't see ourselves as we really are at all. We see ourselves according to our beautiful dream pictures. And every dream picture I have about myself is at the mercy of this man's word, or that man's scowl, or of society not behaving the way I thought I should be treated by society. I don't want to be at the mercy of anyone. Not of you, not of the world. And I don't have to be. But I have to leap in the dark. I can't play it safe with my smug little religion, with my so-called spiritual guide, the man who went to school all these years and is supposed to be in touch with God. That's the last thing he is in touch with. Haven't you ever studied the faces of people who tell you they know the answers? Haven't you ever watched their behavior right while they were talking with you? You ever catch them in an off-guard expression 5 minutes after the meeting? Or as they were walking into the meeting and didn't know you were looking at them? Don't you ever do little things like that? You had better start. Then see how much faith you have in these people. 3 words. Take this with you. Desperation breeds gullibility. Desperation breeds gullibility. When I no longer yearn for your company, that is a leap into the dark. I can have your company, which is quite a different thing than yearning for it. When I yearn for your company, I have immediately said, you are necessary to my happiness, which is a falsehood. Your wife, your husband, and all these other people in your life are not necessary to your happiness or your security at all. Would you be delighted to find that out? Which does not mean you put these people out of your life at all. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about living in the middle of society and being free of it by not being its slave anymore. I asked you earlier, and I'll repeat, what would happen to you if someone or something you are depending on suddenly collapsed, suddenly went away? Find out. Now you tell me. Don't you sit here and try to tell me how strong you are. You're lying. You're not strong at all. And you make it worse by lying about it. How are you going to feel when you lose your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your so-called security? What's going to happen to this strong you who knows so much theology and has studied metaphysics and knows psychology? We end up crying like little babies. There's this big 6-foot man, and then he get this suit on and the carnation. Man, he has that flashy, toothy smile, and he gives you lectures, and the man is terrified. You're very foolish to believe in him or her. Oh yes. There's no difference between him and that pretty woman then. That real attractive woman, oh boy. You're a slave. Or that familiar woman, that familiar man, that familiar circumstance. How we scream when we're thrown out of the familiar. I'll tell you what to do. You deliberately and consciously walk out of the familiar and watch your terror, and it will vanish. Because you're doing something consciously instead of mechanically. Do you know that hostility is unnecessary? Do you know that hostility toward the truth or toward any other human being can only hurt, and there is no way on earth it can be good? How can something that is bad be good? Don't tell me hostility is good. It isn't. It's terrible. It tears me apart. It tears you apart. Then why do we continue in it? Because it's all we know. Maybe no one ever told me these things before. Or maybe they did and I wasn't ready for them, because all I knew was that once I conquer the world, then all these subconscious fears would vanish. Oh yeah. That's what we thought when we were 20 and 30. By the time we got 40, we began to have our doubts, didn't we? want to be able to walk in and out of it with no concern, with no attachment. I want to be able to walk in and out of it, which I will be able to do when I have found this thing we're talking about. Let it collapse. Why do you try to hold what you call your world in place? As if you or I am a God who can hold it in place. That's what we think we are. This hardened egotism of ours insists that it is a God that events should obey. And when they don't, the exposure of our pretense throws us into hell. The exposure of my pretense throws me into hell. If I didn't pretend, could I be thrown there? Could I suffer? If you make an aroused determination, that's all right. That's good. An aroused determination with a lot of feeling in it that you're going to go into this as best you can, put a lot of feeling into it, you will get that much gold out of it. You will put, to use an expression, you'll put 100 pounds of energy into it, and out of that 100 pounds of energy, you will get 1 ounce of gold. But isn't that good? Because the next time you put out 100 ounces of energy, you will get 2 ounces of gold. Now you've got 3 ounces. And the next hunt, see, at first we get very little profit, so much of it is wasted. But the gold, the psychic spiritual gold increases, and then it becomes your gold. You can only have your gold, not the preacher's, not the book's gold. That's not your gold. You're just reading about it. You want to own it, don't you? You want to be it. That's what we're aiming for, to be the gold. Who can take that away from you? Who can take anything away from the kingdom of heaven which is within? Who can steal that? It can't be stolen. What can be stolen is the possibility of finding the kingdom of heaven within. And your evil friends, all your evil friends, will do their best to take it away from you if they ever heard that you were going into this. And all your own evil thoughts will do their best to take it away from you. Because darkness can't stand light, can it? Darkness is the enemy of light. Don't put yourself on the side of darkness. One value of these meetings is that it enables each one of us here to slow down. You're all slowed down here right now. You're slow. You understand? Yeah. You're slowed down. So that when you slow down, you can see. You're running at top speed down the road down there. You can't see over here. You're too busy running. We're slowing down. Now I can glimpse a tree there and a bush there and a rock there. I can see what's happening inside of me. And the understanding of it eventually sets me free of it. I can see that thorn bush over there. I can see the pit, the dangerous pit over there. I never saw the pit before because I was running so fast trying to get man's gold out there. We don't see where we're going, do we? slowing down has its own bit of discomfort because I'm so used to running at top speed. I don't want to slow down. Do it during the day, physically. Actually walk from that kitchen to the living room half as fast as you usually do and watch the odd feeling it gives you. You're not used to it, but it's that little minor shock that enables you to say, hey, I'm walking from the dining room, or whatever it was, the kitchen to the dining room. 10,000 times before that, you had walked without knowing you were walking from one room to another. Now, you're aware of it. You say, what's the value of that? The value is this is the first step toward getting out, to see your state as it is.
Vernon, would you please discuss feelings of guilt after we've seen or recognized the state by self-observation?
All right, guilt. Guilt is always a wrong reaction, always. There's nothing good about guilt at all. Instead of guilt, why don't you simply see as a fact that you behaved in a way that was self-defeating? Can you see that for example, self-defense of any kind is self-defeating. Self-defense is self-defeating. If I defend myself when I do something wrong or have a wrong thought or wrong attitude, I must inevitably go over into guilt at my bad behavior. But I might very, very cleverly cover it up because guilt is an uncomfortable feeling. Therefore, when I first feel the guilt, I'll try to get rid of it by distracting myself with some other kinds of thoughts. Even the thought, well, if I confess to God, He'll forgive me, therefore I'm free of it. Even this is a distraction. Because remember we said you place God outside of yourself. That's just a phony excuse to continue with your neurotic nature, your bad behavior. If I can replace identification with guilt, that is, cease to call myself a guilty sinner, with seeing the plain fact without getting a false pleasure out of the fact, then that's quite a different reaction to bad behavior. Do you know that there's a great deal of neurotic pleasure in being a sinner? And some organized religions take advantage of this to keep their people slaves. People love their guilt. At least they're somebody. Don't you know that it's very egotistical to feel guilty? Who are you to go around feeling that you are such a guilty sinner who has betrayed the world, having poured your sickness out onto the world? Who do you think you are? You're so horrible. Who do you think you are? See? See? You're bragging. You're saying, I can do. You can certainly cause a wrong reaction in some other person. You can certainly hurt their feelings, which you'll justify, and so continue your own sickness. You love your sickness? Yes, you do, because it's all you know. I'm sorry, but you'll just have to suffer from yourself if you don't want this. Go ahead. It's your life. Go ahead. There's no stop. Go ahead. Go ahead and suffer in the future as you've suffered in the past. Now look, I know that you're afraid. I know that when you're hostile, you're afraid. I know you're scared. I also know you must be told all these things if you're going to ever break the pattern. You know, I know that suffering, while it has a false foundation, which is identification in the wrong way with myself, I also know that suffering is a very actual state. I know that when you suffer, you suffer. I know the pain that you're in. I'm telling you, you can be free of the pain if you're willing to go along with the truth, not with me. If you identify with me, I'm saying you can go along with the truth, and the truth shall set you free. I will not tolerate your lying here. And you had better get that straight right now. I will not tolerate your lying, and I can spot it as clearly as I spot that curtain. So you have to make a choice. Do you understand that you and I are not in ego competition at all? Because I'm not playing the game at all. You may be playing it. I'm not playing it with you. No competition. It's your life. I'm not responsible, fortunately, for your life. I'm responsible for straightening myself out. I'm not responsible for straightening you out at all. Truth is responsible for that. Thank heaven I'm not responsible for you. And I'm not going to take any responsibility for you that you refuse to take for yourself. You might as well just drop the whole performance right here and now. Just do it. Get it over with. Go through the pain. Go through the shock of dropping the phony stage performance. Because you're not going to get away with it here. I'll guarantee you that. You never have, and you never will. Your shattering is your salvation. Your destruction is your rescue. Your death is your life. Your humiliation is your uplifting. Do you know that you are condemning yourself here in this room? I will speak personally for a minute. Do you know that you are condemning yourself personally in this room right now in a way in which I am not condemning you? I know what's going on out there. I see what's going on. Why are you condemning yourself? You don't have to. You're not condemned at all in this room. We are told there's something wrong with us, and we can straighten that out, and that's the end of it. Don't you ever let people scold you, bawl you out, make you feel inferior, make you feel bad. Don't you listen to them. You pay any attention to them. Don't pay attention to yourself, to your own dark parts when they try to scold you and make you feel bad. Don't you listen to them, either out there or in here. Refuse it. Because God, truth, reality, has nothing whatever to do with condemning you as a guilty sinner. God has nothing to do with it. No one is condemned, but those who do not want this are let go because there is no alternative to it. No one is required, contrary to what churches teach, no human being is required of his separate individual ego to save another person. Only the truth within a person who has found himself can help another person find himself. Christ said, "Of myself I can do nothing." That's what that's all about. Only God can do. Of myself I can do nothing. If Tom Smith or Mary Jones tries to save someone, that is vanity masquerading as help. And the blind shall lead the blind, and both shall fall into the ditch. Effective as of right now, you will stop getting a false pleasure out of condemning yourself, out of feeling guilty. Effective as of right now, you will not do it again for the rest of your life. But you're to recognize, instead, you're to recognize self-defeating behavior as self-defeating, which is another thing. The doctor sees the man with a sickness, he doesn't condemn it. He says, here is a fact, and here is the medicine that can cure the fact. So the man is healed. Suppose the doctor started giving the man a lecture on the evils of having a headache. What is more ridiculous than that? A moral lecture on the evils of having a headache. The poor man would get a lecture and still have his headache. This is cosmic medicine. And if you think you're going to get cured by anything else, forget it, because you're not. Why don't you drop your defenses right now as you're sitting here? I can see them on your faces. Why do you think you need to win? Who's winning? There's no one to win a thing. When you see that, is there any thought of winning or losing, of ego competition? Questions, comments? Yes?
What do we teach our children so that they don't feel guilty?
Pardon?
What do we teach our children so that they don't feel guilty?
Teach them the things that you have learned through hard self-work on yourself, so that by example, they will see that Mama isn't angry all the time. Mama doesn't get upset when she doesn't get her way. Mama, Papa is a sane, mature, decent human being. Can you think of anything more beautiful to teach to your children? Huh? You know half the reason we're scared here today? Because we looked at Papa and Mama and saw how scared they were. Weren't they? We didn't know any better. We said, well, Mom and Papa, they're my gods, and they're scared. I guess this is the way you go, fighting in this world, and being scared and doing the best you can in a wicked world. I guess this is the way it goes. That's all they knew. The poor, pathetic Papa and Mama, that's all they knew. Don't condemn them. They were just as suffering as anyone else, just as you are. No one ever told them any different. Break the pattern with you. You don't have to be afraid of anything. I said anything. But you have to work. You have to work at this like you've worked at nothing else in your entire life. Your 6 years of college to become a doctor or engineer, nothing compared to this. Nothing at all. It was the simplest thing imaginable to pass that lawyer's test, that real estate agent's test. Cinch. This is hard work because this work means the end of me. Thank heaven. The false me has been causing me all this grief. We can start right today. Stop going that way and slow it down at first, then send it back the other way. So that instead of getting sicker and sicker and scareder every day, I get more healthy every day and more free of the surrounding insanity in this world. Don't be afraid of the surrounding insanity. Because when you're sane, you can be in the middle of it and be untouched by it. To be without your answer. Now just listen to that. Don't be afraid to be without your answer. You ever watched yourself arguing for your own side, what you called your side? How desperate we are to prove our position, that we're right, that we already have the facts, that we know what we're doing with our life. Here's a man, a woman. Let's take a woman this time. The woman is an alcoholic. She's hard. She's bitter. She's cruel to her children. And she has the answers to life. She goes down to the local church, or goes to the local study group, and she has her philosophy. And she never sees the fantastic contradiction between the way she lives and the way she professes. She never sees the contradiction, which is as different from that ceiling is from the floor. And you could point it out to her and she still wouldn't see it. That's how thick the wall is in our minds. And that's why this is hard, endless, but purely profitable work. Why do you defend your position? I'll tell you why. Remember we said this morning we feared the game coming to an end. This is why I protect my political position, my religious position, my social position, because I have connected it with my sense of self. Now pay attention to me. Here, look this way. As long as I protect this position, I feel a pseudo-security. Why don't I drop it and put an end to what I've called myself, therefore put an end to my pseudo-security, therefore put an end to my fear. how simply we can state some of these things. When I fight, I am wrong. When I fight, I am wrong. Now, I challenge you, I dare you to tell me the rightness in fighting. Tell me. You tell me why it's right to fight. Anything. Fight here. Fight what you've heard. You tell me why it's right to fight. You can't tell. Because it's not right. It means there's something in me that's afraid to let go of my egotism, of my wrong position. Now that is a fact. Can I see the fact, or am I going to even fight that fact and therefore keep the prison bars right in front of me? The prison bars all around me, and I put the pretty lace curtains in the window, and I called it my castle. Take the pretty lace curtains down and see the bars, then you'll find the way out through those bars. But not as long as you put the curtain, the pretty pink lace curtains in front, and call it your castle. Because it isn't at all. You think you can get out? You try to get out, and you'll see whether there's bars there or not. I guarantee you they are. Take the curtains down, see the bars. Now you can work intelligently to saw them. We've got the cosmic saw here. Cosmic key. The truth will not tolerate anyone's lies, anyone's fighting, anyone's resistance, anyone's deception, anyone's self-deception. It will not tolerate anything of that sort. You will try, I will try in vain all my life to try to mix the two, and they won't mix. You take that, or you take that, but you can't have both that and that. How many times in the New Testament, Old Testament too, I guess, it says you make up your mind which you want. You take your choice, because you cannot serve God and mammon. You can't take this and this at the same time. One of them has to go. And when you leave here in a little bit, every one of you in this room will have made your decision for the truth or for falsehood. I will guarantee you that. You have to make a decision. You're getting responses, you're giving responses rather, to what you're hearing here. And you will go out of here having made a decision. Now, if you're just capable of making the littlest, smallest decision in favor of this, even a small one, then that is great. It's tremendous. So do make just that little bit. Don't go out of here locked up and closed, or you'll have to go back where you came from. And where you came from is hell. Psychological hell. Emotional hell. I don't even have to tell you this, do I? You know what your life is like. You know Vernon, I know what it's like. You don't have to tell me, I know. I can see your faces.
What is a conscious act?
Pardon?
What is a conscious act?
Conscious act is when you see yourself doing something. Take it as simply as that at the start. Right now, at this particular moment, I am consciously observing myself while talking to you. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It depends on what state I want to be in, what I want to do at the particular moment. Right now, I'm talking consciously to you because I've deliberately put myself into that state. I'm hearing myself talk. I can hear my own voice. A minute ago, I was not, because that was not my particular point at the moment. To see yourself do something. actually see it as it is, instead of being divided within myself. For example, if you're invited to a meeting of some kind, a political meeting, and you think you're going down there because you think it's going to help the world, you're going to help pass this law or get rid of this law, which is all insanity. You're going to help the world. You're going down there divided because you still think you can do something. Can I walk down to that meeting while watching myself and seeing that I'm in an egotistical state, thinking that I can do something for the world when I can't do something for me? Those of us who don't want to save ourselves try to save the world. Right? And what do we give to the world? Our own insanity, calling it social reform. Repeat. I give to the world what I am. What am I? I have to find out by a conscious act of watching myself in action and not calling arrogance power or self-confidence. You give to when you walk out of here, each one of us, you're going to give to your family, to your children, your husband, your wife, to your relative, to the world, what you are. All right? You tell me what you are. You tell me what you are. That is what you give, not reform, not goodness, because you don't have any. You don't have an ounce of goodness, not 1 ounce. You think you have a little goodness? You have no goodness at all. You have ideas of goodness, which is not goodness. And how do you feel when you're told you don't have any goodness in you at all? Some of you have advanced to the point where you can begin to take it. I know some of you have. To the point where you no longer take these things as insults, as condemnation, but as facts. And it falls on a small part of mental health in you. And every time you come here and learn these things, the health gets a little better, a little bigger. And the sickness gets a little weaker, falls away. I know this is happening. I've seen it. I've observed it in some of you. I've observed you getting healthier. It's a terrible struggle, but we're doing it. We're not going back. You going back, Joan?
No.
For this reason, Vernon, then there's great advantage in working in a group.
Would you repeat that, please?
For this reason, then, there's great advantage.
Yes. Oh, yeah. See, do you know what friendship is in this group? I'll tell you. Friendship in this group is that part of you, June, and that part of your husband, and that part of Connie, and that part of Larry, and that part of Sally, that says just what Joan said, enough of the insanity. Enough. I don't even know where I'm going, but I do know it's enough. We're friends, huh? Aren't we? Aren't we? That's friendship. And the only kind of friendship there is. All else is fraud and lies, calculated to keep my ego in place if I keep yours in place. And then we're enemies, calling ourselves friends. Isn't it strange how often us friends, we fight? How friends are always fighting? Isn't that a strange? Friends are not supposed to fight. We fight all the time. This is real friendship. Little bit here and there. And you sense it. I know you do. Some of you do. Yes.
Friendship with this kind of work is not one person lying to another that they know the answers.
Very good. Fair enough. Friendship is not being afraid to admit that my life is a mess. It always has been. And I'm willing to listen to see whether there is a way out. And happily, very happily, for each one of you in this room, You're in a place where you will not be lied to, where you'll find the way out. I'm going to tell you something too. Maybe this will help you, even if you don't accept it now. If you go out anyplace else, you're going to be lied to. In all probability. There are other groups maybe that are telling the truth, but they're so rare. Are we on or off one? We're on. It doesn't necessarily have to be a religious group where you'd be lied to. It could be a political one, a social club.